Hey guys, another chapter 5 video here. We're in 5.2 if you're in the same book as we are in class, and we're working on how can I identify a proportional graph. How can I identify a proportional graph? Okay, so what are we doing here? Well, we've been working on proportions, and proportions are two equal fractions, but now we're going to look at them graphically, and we're going to try a problem to kind of get us started. So to get us started, we're going to build a table in our notes. And in this table are going to be the two variables x and y. So go ahead in your notebook and draw a table that looks similar to mine. I'm also going to give you some numbers to put in the table. I'm going to give you 2, 4, and 6 as my x points. And I'm going to give you 6, 8, and 10 as my y points. So if you need to pause the video to copy all this down, go for it. Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to turn this table into a graph. And when we go to do that, what you need to remember is that each table value is what we call a coordinate point. It's a spot on the graph. It's directions. There's a point at x equals 2 and y equals 6. And we write it like this, 2, 6. So what we need to do is grab a ruler and we need to set up a nice looking graph. And we need to think about which type of graph do we need. Do we need a 1-quadrant graph or all 4 quadrants? Well, we don't have any negative numbers, so I think we can work off that first quadrant graph. So I'm going to grab a ruler, and we're going to draw two lines, an x and a y axis. We're going to use the graph paper to make it nice and neat. And then we're going to put a scale on here because scale numbers are super important. And my scale is going to get labeled, and so is my x and y axis. And I'm going to write on the bottom of my x-axis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to go out to almost 10, well 9 I guess. And then I'm going to do the same thing going up the y-axis, all the way up to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Notice when I'm doing it, I'm very neat about it. I know I'm using my computer, but if I had a paper and a pencil right now, I'd be super neat. I'd be using my ruler. I'd be using the lines on the graph paper. Because if I don't do that, if I'm sloppy and messy, I'm going to have a hard time making good graphs, to be honest. So you got to make a nice graph. So I just feel like I emphasize this a lot, but those scale numbers are so important. If you forget to put them on your graph, you'll never be a proficient grapher. You won't reach that level 3. You'll always be at like a 2. Even if all your points are perfect, you got to have those scale numbers. You also need to label your x and y axis, so don't forget those labels. They're so important. Okay, we're going to start with our 2, 6 points. So I'm going to go to x equals 2. You can see my little purple dot down there. And I'm going to go up to 6 and place my point. Then I'm going to graph 4 and 8. So I'm going to go to x equals 4 and I'm going to go up to 8. And then I'm going to graph 6 and 10. So I'm going to go to x equals 6 and up to 10. And we get these 3 points that look like a nice line. In fact, we can connect those points with a line. And even more, we could take our ruler and we could extend that line, make it longer, which is what I really want to do. Now, what is our job? Our job was not just to graph. Our job was to decide, is this a proportion? That was the main question today. So we're going to come back to that in a minute. Save that graph. Be ready to go back. We're going to write some notes. Let's try an example 2. We're going to set up a second graph because we're going to be comparing these graphs here in a second. The second graph is going to have an x and y table that looks like this. It's going to go 1, 2, 3, and 2, 4, 6. So same story. We're going to graph this with a ruler, make it nice and neat. We're going to draw our x and y axis. We're going to put on our scale. We're going to have a nice scale. I like to take my pencil and do little notches for my scale so it stands out on my paper and is easier to read. I'm going to number it the same way I did before with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and same thing going up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 10. Again, those scale numbers and the x and the y labels, so important. Make sure your graph is really nice and neat. Always pause the video when you're graphing because you want to take your time. You don't want to rush it. And then let's plot these points. Let's plot 1 and 2. So I'm going to go to 1 and up to 2 and put a dot. And then we're going to put 2, 4 on the graph. So I'm going to go to x equals 2, and I'm going to go up to 4 and put a dot. And then I'm going to go to 3, 6. So I'm going to go to 3, up to 6, and place a point. Looks like a nice straight line if we were to connect it again. I'm going to take my ruler and connect it and make it a big long line. Now we've got 2 good looking examples, 2 great looking graphs, nice and neat, but now we got to get into which one of them is proportional. So let's talk about proportional relationships. What do we know? Well, we know it's 2 equal ratios. two equal fractions. We know that. Today, when we talk about two equal fractions, I'm going to use those x and y variables. I'm going to say y over x has to equal y over x. They got to be equal to each other. But there's something else about proportions that we can write down. The graph that you make for a proportion has to be a line, which both of our examples are, so that's good, but it has to be a line. That's very important. And here's the third bullet point. The graph must cross through 0, 0, which is called the origin of the graph. We call that the origin. The line must cross through the origin at 0, 0. Now, if all three of these bullets are true, then you have a proportional relationship. But all three bullets must be true. You got to have two equal ratios. It's got to be a line. It's got to go through the origin at 0, 0. So let's go back to our examples. Remember, this was example 1. This was the first graph that we made. Let's think about, is it a proportion? Is y over x equal to y over x if we made two fractions? Well, I'm going to circle two coordinate points in the table, and I'm going to use, I just picked these at random. I'm going to use 2, 6, and 4, 8. And I'm going to make them into fractions. So that would be 6 over 2 and 8 over 4. We'll flip them upside down. Now, are those the same fractions? Well, we could simplify them, or we could just divide them. What's 6 divided by 2? Yeah, 3. What's 8 divided by 4? 2. So we have 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Those aren't equal. So already I'm like, oh, this is not a proportion. Those fractions didn't equal. But look, there's the origin. I'm going to circle it. That's 0, 0. Does our line cross through there? No, our line doesn't cross through there. So yeah, this is definitely not a proportional relationship. It is a line, but it's not a proportion. So not proportional. How about the second example, example number 2 that we graphed? Here it is. There's a picture of it again. Same thing. Is y over x equal to y over x? Let's pick 2 points from the table. I picked 1 and 2 and 2 and 4. And we're going to flip those over and make it 2 over 1 and 4 over 2. And we're going to divide them. 2 divided by 1 is 2. And 4 divided by 2 is 2. So 2 equals 2. All right, yay, we got 2 equal fractions. So that's step 1. It is in the shape of a line, so that's kind of step 2. And does it go through the origin? Does it go through 0, 0? It definitely looks like it hits 0, 0. Now this is where you got to be nice and neat with your graph and use your ruler, because if you weren't nice and neat, you might have drew a line and it might not look like it goes through 0, 0. But if you were neat and you used your ruler, it should go through 0, 0. So the answer to this question is yes, it is proportional. It meets all 3 requirements. Alright guys, so we're going to wrap up this video. I just want you to really remember that proportional relationships have to have 3 things. They have to have equal ratios, the graph has to be in the shape of a line, and it has to go through that 0, 0 coordinate point, which we call the origin. Now, if all 3 of those are true, you got a proportion. Alright guys, we're going to practice this in class and there'll be more videos. See you next time.